Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our missions to help families grow closer through reading and to give parents the tools they need to help their kids learn to be respectful, loving, and inclusive. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Mitali Perkins. She is here to celebrate Bear Tree and Little Wind, a story for Holy Week. Before we invite Mitali into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. It's at Jedley Magic on Twitter. And we have a fantastic Pinterest page called Reading With Your Kids. And we would also love it if you could go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Three things we want you to do at readingwithyourkids.com. First, sign up for our free newsletter. We are completely revamping it, adding to it, putting it on steroids. And it's going to be debuting in April. We want you to be one of the first to receive it. We also want you to check out our Parents Click Here button at the top of the page so you can visit our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame and find a great new book to add to your family library. And also, please be sure to feel free to use the contact button at the top of the page. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would love to hear on the podcast. Join us right now from the Bay Area in the beautiful state of California. Our guest today is here to celebrate a beautiful story for the Holy Week. It's called Bear Tree and Little Wind. Please welcome to the show, Mitali Perkins. Hey, Mitali, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jed. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I'm excited to have you on. Let's jump right into it. What's Bear Tree and Little Wind all about?
Well, Bear Tree and Little Wind is, I would say, an outsider's view of Holy Week. It features two characters. One is Little Wind and the other is Bear Tree. And Little Wind is really seeing all the events of Holy Week from the outside and wondering what's going on. And it's really the faith of his friend, Bear Tree, that allows him to keep coming back and finding out who this quiet man coming in on a donkey is. And then leading into her faith leads him into the future where she's waiting for his return.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who aren't Christian, the Holy Week refers to the Christian week leading up to the holiday of Easter. And it is a beautiful time with lots of different traditions. And the neat thing about it is that there are, because there are so many different branches of Christianity, there are a lot of different traditions throughout those different branches, but also a lot of different traditions because Christianity is worldwide. It's celebrated differently in different cultures in different countries. And it's a beautiful time, and it's wonderful to kind of think that you're part of this beautiful worldwide family.
Yes, that's so true. One of the things I love about this book is that for so long when I go to churches in the West and even in other parts of the world, you still see like a very pale-skinned Jesus in art, and when you go to a remote part of rural South Africa and you see this white-faced Jesus, it's a little bit disconcerting because I don't think he was. I think he was very Middle Eastern looking. And so the illustrator, Coale, of this book, who's just, I think she's a genius. She's based in Vietnam, and her work with color is just incredibly gorgeous. She made him look very Middle Eastern, and Little Wind also, because Little Wind is a wind in the Middle East. He also has a beautiful little Middle Eastern face. So I'm excited about presenting these renditions of Easter to the global community.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, and it makes perfect sense that Jesus looked Middle Eastern because that's where he was born.
Right. Yes, we forget that with the blue-eyed Jesus on all the greeting cards. And I think there's nothing wrong with that because we like to see, we like to see Jesus in our own context. And so the art and everything that's been created for years is out of the European context. And absolutely nothing wrong with that. But right now the church is widening and spreading and there's more growth in areas that have brown skin and dark hair. And so it's actually a good time for different renditions and different depictions of Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. And, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, right at the beginning of the Bible, it says that we were created in the image of God. And I think that that's possibly why a lot of those European artists, when they read that, they said, oh, God looks like me, so that's what I'll paint. But I think now that we're more sophisticated and understand that the world is so diverse, maybe we can, when we hear those words, we can understand that God was talking about the fact that to look deeper, to see his image in all of us.
That's right. We were made in God's image. God wasn't made in our image,
Exactly,
right? So,
exactly.
yeah, and I did not hear anything about Holy Week or Jesus until I was in college because I grew up in another faith tradition. Mm-hmm. And so when I first heard about Jesus, I thought, well, that's for, white people and black people. It's not for immigrants from India like me. So I didn't know anything about the events of Holy Week. So that's why when I say that, I wrote this from an outsider's perspective. It really is hopefully a fresh take. I think a lot of people grow up. I mean, you grew up in the Catholic Church, so you grew up with beautiful traditions, but sometimes it just feels like it's it was your childhood tradition. And so, when you didn't grow up with it, like I did, there's a different way of seeing it. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying, in this book, I'm hoping to offer that to the church and to people outside the church, an outsider's view of what happened that week in Jerusalem when there was so much turmoil and chaos. And, we think of it as, the Easter Bunny and, a sweet time, but it really, the first week was truly a time of chaos and, suffering and all kinds of global events were going on at that time. There was war between an insurrection and all kinds of things. So, that's what this book is. Not your Easter Bunny version of Easter. This is more of a I don't know, like a intense but beautiful look at it.
I think that that's really important, especially now, because we're going through a very intense upheaval in our own time here in the United States. There's lots of unrest on both sides of the political table, and people are unhappy, and people are worried, and they're not quite sure what's going to happen, as I'm sure the apostles and the followers of Jesus were feeling in that Holy Week. But there's a lot of hope that came out of Holy Week, a lot of beauty that came out of that uncertain time.
Oh yes, definitely. But it's interesting because the little wind is so confused because Bear Tree's so sure this is real king that's coming, and that when real king comes, everything will be made right. And then because I use these elements from creation, the wind and the tree, to sort of give it a broader sweep. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that kids will be able to ask those questions as they read this book with their parents, because I do include things like the burning of the temple by the Roman soldiers, right after 70 years after Jesus, after Holy Week, there was this absolute scourging of, demolition of Jerusalem, which seems counterintuitive. If Jesus came to bring peace as he did, then why was so much chaos and war come after he came? And as you said, we're still in those times. Mm-hmm. So for a child to be able to, in the safe circle of their parents' or grandparents' arms, to read the events of what actually happened in Holy Week, and to ask the questions of why is it getting burned, and what's going to happen to Bear Tree? Is Bear Tree going to survive? And oh my goodness, little wind looks so scared there. And oh look, it's all burning. And then at the end, of course, we end with the hope that as Bear Tree's seeds are scattered throughout the whole earth, that the hope of palm trees clapping their hands when Jesus comes back again the second time to restore peace and to bring the actual end of all war and chaos at that time.
Yeah.
So that's the sweeping look of creation on the particular events of Holy Week.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit just about Holy Week for those that aren't familiar with it or, have just heard this thing, Holy Week. Kind of share with us, especially from somebody who chose to be part of this tradition as opposed to being born into it as I was.
Right. So it really does start with that Palm Sunday where Jesus is coming into Jerusalem. And in my book, little Linda's thinking, is he going to come in on a stallion? Is he, because the trees are clapping their hands in excitement. The palm trees are so excited that real king is coming. And yet when we see Jesus approaching, he's perched on a donkey and there's a baby foal with just quietly walking in to Jerusalem on this donkey, of course, fulfilling prophecy, but from the perspective of little Wind, that's not what he was expecting. He was expecting this big king to come roaring in on a stallion and make everything right. And so that's the first Palm Sunday. And then we have the days of the week where Jesus, the Maundy Thursday, where he ate with his disciples, the Last Supper. Then comes Good Friday. And there's every day in Holy Week has a particular memory associated with that week of Jesus' approach to the cross. And so we as in the church, we slow it down a little bit. We take our time as we welcome Jesus and we watch him come closer and closer to his destination, which isn't a throne yet. It's a cross. And so Saturday is, it all goes quiet because Good Friday, he goes to the cross. But then, of course, we have Easter Sunday. And then I think in the Catholic tradition and the Orthodox tradition, Monday is the day where you focus on when he's going to come back. Mm-hmm. And so the book goes all the way to that point where we're looking forward to his returning as on the throne the next time, not on the donkey, not on a cross, but on the throne.
Yeah. Mitali, if you don't mind, you shared with us that you came into the faith and you chose to be part of this faith. And I think that is something, and again, I think most people are kind of born into their faith. And the idea of conversion, whether it's to Catholicism or Christianity or to Islam or Buddhism, I think that that's foreign to a lot of people. It's a big step for lots of folks. What was it in your journey that inspired you to make that change, to make that conversion?
Well, as I said, I was born in India, but we lived all over the world. And so I grew up seeing a lot of suffering in different parts of the world and hunger. And so when I got to college, I made it my vow that there would be no more hungry children on earth by the time I was done with my life. And yet still those questions of suffering and evil. My father taught us to believe in a creator God who created all the beauty of a butterfly and the symmetry. And he had a beautiful faith. But when I looked at the suffering, that didn't seem to make sense to me. How does such a good and beautiful God who made all the beauty in the earth allow such horrible violence and suffering to continue? And for people, how can he love us if we continue to suffer? That was my big question. And I was searching in all different faiths and all different philosophies through my college years. I went to a fantastic college. I had a real opportunity there to read widely and in the humanities and philosophy and in the religions. And so, I didn't consider reading. In fact, I was assigned to read the Bible my first freshman year of humanities. And I opened the book of Genesis, and I read about these two naked people in a garden with some fruit tree. And I thought, what is this? I had no idea. So, you can return your textbooks to the library to get your money back after you. So I thought, I'll just get 70% back and return this Bible. I'll never read it again. And then in my junior year, a friend of mine gave me the book, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And I had grown up reading the Chronicles of Narnia, but of course not associating Aslan with Jesus in any way because I didn't know anything about Jesus. Mm-hmm. So but I did trust C.S. Lewis. So I took the book with me. I studied my third year in Vienna, Austria. And I took the book with me in the New Testament, and I promised my friend I'd read it. And of course, I don't know if you've ever been to Vienna, but it is got some of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. And so it was winter, it was snowing, and I would go into these cathedrals and I would look at the art, and there would be a lot of art from the Bible, but mostly there would be this cross, and there would be this man on the cross up front, this suffering man on the cross in the front of every one of those cathedrals. And I began to wonder, what? Who is this man? What is happening? I mean, I knew generally who Jesus was, but nothing specific. So started reading the Gospels, and I read it very slowly during that time. And I got to the part where Jesus, this very thing we were talking about, was approaching the cross. And by then, knew that he wasn't, white man's God. I could tell he had a lot of the same values of, hospitality and the way he welcomed people and children that come from my culture of origin. So by then I was feeling very much astounded by his Middle Eastern sort of way. And then when he went to the cross and he took the cross, he went to the cross, he submitted to it. For me, that was the first time it was at the intersection of a suffering God who loves us made any sense at all, because he himself took that suffering, the worst the world can poured out on him, and yet he still loved. So that's when I thought, this is more than a man. This person is, of course, the resurrection, which to me seems very viable, because every single one of his followers went to their death, proclaiming that they'd seen him again. So at that point, I didn't know anything about the church, anything. I just thought, wow, I'll take it. I was from a Hindu tradition, so I said, I'll take Jesus as my guru. This will be great. And I won't have to tell anybody. And so, but of course, people were praying for me, and I didn't know it. And so when I got back to this at my college, there was a baptism, a chance to get baptized. And so when I was baptized, it was really a life-changing moment for me. And then I grew in my faith, and I learned about the wider traditions. I learned about the Catholic Church, and just so much that has changed in my life, and sort of like that little yeast, that little seed that has permeated my life through these years. That was a long time ago. I was only 19. So, and of course, I'm only 21 now, Dad.
Exactly. It was a long 2 years, though.
Yeah, it was a lot happened in those decades, a lot. So I'm very grateful. And my sister also became a follower of Jesus. And then before my father passed, he had a dream, and he also received Jesus as his savior. And my mother, 3 years ago, requested to be baptized. So my entire family of origin, except for one sister, is now in the church. So it's kind of amazing. I didn't say much or do much, but I think that was God's gift to me.
That's wonderful. We hear so much negative, associated with the church, especially lately with different scandals and whatnot. And we hear a lot of people who are pounding on the Bible, telling you that this person will be condemned and that person will be condemned, and the hate. And sometimes you sit back and say, wait a minute, I thought this guy Jesus was all about love. I'm not feeling a lot of love coming from you guys. But I think if we can look past the noise, and I think that's maybe that's one of the reasons Jesus came in to Holy Week on that donkey, to let us know, to look beyond the noise. The noise is all noise, that the real message can be found within us, within these moments where people are together in breaking bread with each other and spending time in communion with each other, communicating with each other.
Yeah, and in the book, in Bear Tree and Little Wind, I introduced you as Little Wind calls him the quiet man. You were talking about how he entered such a world of noise quietly. And I think that's because our world, the antidote to all the shouting in our world, has to be a quiet man, right? If a shouting man came in, it was just more cacophony. But because he came in so quietly and so lovingly, Koa drew pictures of him washing his disciples' feet, of him with the children. And I think hopefully as children read the book, they'll sense that something powerful is happening as this quiet man came into the world, that the whole world, all of creation, is no longer going to be the same because he quietly entered.
Yeah. I think as I'm listening, and I just received my copy of Bear Tree and Little Wind earlier today, and I haven't had a chance to look at it. But as you're talking about your depiction of Jesus, I'm imagining my kids when they were 5 and 7 years old really wanting to be friends with that Jesus.
Yes, I think that's right. But I also took a little bit of a step back because I wanted the child to see themselves in little wind, who's this adorable. She personified this wind. The Bible says he makes the winds his messengers. And so this beautiful personified little wind comes in, and I'm hoping the child will be able to see themselves in that wind, asking the questions of who is this man and where is he going? What's happening to him? And so a parent can gently lead a child, because for a child, Holy Week is as new as it was to me. It's not all jaded and tarnished with Bible thumping people the way that it is for an adult. And so I'm hoping that those questions of faith, like why, given that Jerusalem was destroyed and all the palm trees burned, why is this one palm tree saying, no, I still believe, I still believe? And so I'm hoping that, that will be a way for them to introduce a child to all those big incidents and bring them into a sort of close look at what happened. I've written books for kids now for 25 years, and I've traveled around the world speaking to kids. I prefer kids to adults. I think adults are way overrated. So I was always, when I write a book for kids, I'm always thinking about those little eyes and little hands. And we have two boys, and so I read aloud to them nonstop. And when I wrote this book, I was paying attention. Cola and I both paid attention to those little details that draw a child in and engage a child and help them to ask questions about what's happening.
Yeah. I love that you want your book to be something that inspires kids to ask questions. I have this very vivid memory when my kids were in high school. They were very active in the church, and I remember one of the people in our parish come up and say, "Oh, you must be so proud of your kids. They're involved, and I see them up there on the altar, and it's so wonderful. And I'm so worried because my daughter's going to college next year, and that's when they start to question their faith, and that would be terrible." And I'm thinking, no, that's actually pretty good, because our faith can stand up to questions, and if they can't, then you probably shouldn't believe in the faith.
Right. And I think when you open the book and you see the panel where all of Jerusalem is burning and co-dripped with red flames and the scene of destruction and the soldiers and everybody looks so powerful. For me, it really speaks to this age, of, as you said, where there's these big events and children, there's been a pandemic and fires. We have forest fires all over, California. And so when a child wonders where's God in the middle of that? Why are these things happening? I think there's room in this story to ask those questions, and even for a parent not to have the answer, but to even to ask those questions together. We as parents think we have to have the perfect theological answers, but to sit with a child, with your arm around a child, and to ask the questions of faith, I think is a very powerful part of both their spiritual formation and our formation as well. So yes, I love that you said that. That's my hope, that both adults and children will be able to ask questions of faith with this book.
Yeah. And I love that you're encouraging parents to be able to say, I don't know. Let's pray and ask God together and see what God tells us. Because every parent thinks that they need to be on a pedestal, that our kids put us on pedestals. And so we think that it's our job to stay up there and pretend that we have all the answers. And I always encourage young parents, get off that pedestal as soon as you can. Admit to your kids that you don't know all the answers. It makes your life much easier. It makes your relationship with your kids much better, and it's much more honest. And it gives you the chance to search for those answers together, and that's a beautiful thing.
Right. Maybe that's why God left so much mysteries, because there would be less room for pride, both in adults and also I'm thinking about, priests and pastors who also tend to think they have to have the answers, but together we're just children of God, with just to know that a man came who loved us and gave his life for us. And then people said he was raised from the dead. And that's all we have together. And there's certainly room for a lot more mystery around that. So I think maybe he knows our prideful hearts. So he didn't give us all the, clear A-B, here's the steps. Here are the steps of faith. We have to question together. Yeah. Seek.
And I think that's part of the fun. When we do come together and let ourselves be vulnerable to each other, open up ourselves to different ideas and take the journey together. That's where we find God.
Right. And it also communicates to our kids that we're not afraid, that God is a big God, that we don't need to be afraid of doubts and questions. And we ourselves can ask them because God is a big and loving God and allows us room for that. Whereas if we think, no, 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 that's not the right answer, here's what you have to say, then it makes God very small and puts us bigger than God. And that's not how it's intended. So, yes, so hopefully this book will be a way for the conversations and the questions as a family to begin, to continue, and yet depict the incredible events that happened that week in the bare simplicity of what actually took place in Jerusalem in history. These are not things that we're making up. These are not just Easter Bunny-esque. This is actually a man who came and who was executed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For us.
For us, yes. Yeah. Thanks be to God for us.
Mitali, tell everybody, please, where they can go to find out more about Bear Tree and Little Wind, a story for Holy Week, and find out more about you and all the books that you've created.
Yeah, so there's a website, beartreelittlewind.com. You can get there, go there, and find out more about the book. And then from there, that'll be you'll find my website, mitaliperkins.com, with links to all my other books, and also just more about me and my journey and this wonderful vocation of creating stories for young people, which I feel so blessed to have been given this vocation.
Awesome. We've had a wonderful time speaking with the author of Bear Tree and Little Wind, a story for Holy Week. Our guest has been Mitali Perkins. Hey, Mitali, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jed, and I look forward to hopefully maybe seeing you in Massachusetts when I'm there sometime soon.
Amen, amen.
All right. Thanks.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Amalia Hoffman. She'll be here to celebrate Masha Munching and Stephen Joseph. He is returning to the show to celebrate snoodles, kiddoodles, poodles, and lots of noodles. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book, and it doesn't cost a thing. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, scroll on down to be a guest. Oh, you could also scroll on down and find out how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools to help your book stand out from the thousands of books that are published every single month. Talking about helping you stand out, we have a great monthly promotion program that can really help your book stand out. We'll promote your book through commercials on the podcast, messages to our 75,000 plus social media followers, and display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. Our billboards are in all 4 corners of the continental United States: Boston, Albany, New York, Toledo, Ohio, Atlanta, Georgia, Los Angeles, California, Sacramento, California, and coming to Hermiston in Oregon. Check it all out today. Readingwithyourkids.com, Authors Click Here. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Mitali Perkins. Please be sure to check out Bear Tree and Little Wind, a great story for Holy Week. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I got to thank Augie the doggy for having my back here in the studio. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.